You're listening to Second Cut. This is the weekly podcast from thefilmmagazine.com, where we talk about topics in film theory, history, criticism, whatever order I say that in, through movie reviews. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who struggles driving to the store at like below the speed limit.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who could quite easily injure himself doing the simplest day-to-day task, never mind throwing myself off a building.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that realizes what they should have done for this is to have some kind of like massive foam hammer or anvil or something to smash over my head to start this off or something like that.
Yeah.
Either that or I can do the thing that they always tell you in school where somebody's rocking on the back of their chair, so they have to go through the story of the kid that was swinging on his chair and cracked his head open, you know? Maybe I can do that during the thing.
Before we were doing this, I was thinking about how, like, cartoons do all kinds of crazy stuff, but because it's just voice actors, like, you don't need stunt doubles or anything. You draw it. But, you know, it would be cool if they did bring in stunt voice people to do the voices during stunts in cartoons.
Yeah, I think certain kind of really kind of exaggerated kind of vocal delivery, like like Tom and Jerry, you know, like Tom's screeches of pain. You know, it's like if you think you do too many of those in a row, you're not going to throw your voice out. You're not going to work for weeks. You know, so
I tell you what, though,
vocal stunt doubles.
I know it's CGI, but imagine how annoyed you'd be as Vin Diesel if in Guardians all you get to say is "I am Groot" and they get somebody else to do all the stunt "I am Groots." He does I am Groot and somebody else does the or something like that. You know, you get well annoyed.
Oh yeah.
But before we get started, I wondered, you two, have you ever had any particularly grievous bodily injuries? You know, have you ever broken anything in a major way? Or
Yes. I broke both my arms, one jumping off monkey bars. It was the same arm both times.
All right, so
Monkey bars both
at the
times?
same time.
No, the second time was American football. And because coaches are generally terrible people, I had to continue practicing. They said I just got my bell rung. And then I snapped my pelvis, like there's a little bone on the tip of it, playing soccer. So I went for a big kick, football. I went for a big kick and snapped my pelvis. So there you go.
I mean,
I've broken I've broken a couple of toes, my nose, and I cracked my head open a couple of times when I was very small, when I was a small child.
Okay, Buster Keaton.
I was going to say, I've done stuff when I was like very, very young, but in terms of like stuff that's actually kind of beyond about the age of 5 when you stop being able to bounce properly, I think like I think at one point in like beginning of high school, I like slipped down a bank and then like just like very badly bruised my ankle for a couple of days. But that's about it. Like I'm a film student and a writing student, but I don't got outside.
Well, Kieran,
How dare you?
I think you'll recall, because we've seen The Nightingale, children don't necessarily bounce. Sometimes they hit a wall and
Bounced off the wall.
Have you guys seen the cheese chase thing down a hill in Scotland?
Yes.
Oh, cheese rolling.
It's in
Gloucestershire, isn't it?
Gloucestershire. Yeah.
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to offend. I don't.
Yeah.
It's all it's all
completely
British to me.
country, mate.
It's a famous English folk tradition.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've quite managed to get health and safety on it yet. It's probably one of the few things you can still enlist in, and they'll probably do like a talk at the beginning. But yeah, people are literally still hurling themselves down a steep bank.
It's like when you make an exception to like animal cruelty laws for indigenous ritual, but
yeah.
With idiots.
Unfortunately, Jacob, just jumping in very quickly, you go, it's all the same to you. But saying to people in Scotland that something that's English belongs to them is like saying that to Canadians, like you have the American eagle, like as your national bird. Like it's just like there's a way to get offended very quickly.
Hey, I'm over here. They can't do anything to me.
Besides,
They'll try.
Canadians don't get offended. Everyone knows that. They're too nice.
They'll send
Apologise
me
for you.
they'll send me William Wallace gifts, and I will ignore it. Sorry, Mark.
Anyway,
well, we have some questions to get into, not from someone who suspiciously has the same name as one of the hosts. We'll start with, one that should be simple but was difficult for me, from James. Well, it's 3. Best stunt, favorite stunt, is Tom Cruise human? For the last one, I'm going to go with I'm unsure. But
yeah, jury's out on that one.
like people take the mickey out of Tom Cruise for a lot of things, but you cannot deny his sheer enthusiasm and passion.
I've still never been able to work out how insurance works with him, really, because is it just because he's a producer on every one of his films? It's like, so no, you can't stop from doing that.
He signs his own insurance off.
Buys the insurance for the film.
There must be something to do with that.
He would have to essentially take out and organize the insurance for himself.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing when you're to direct a film, you set up the production company first. Because you need a company to then hire the director. But if you're then the director, you then essentially hire yourself. And if you're the production company hiring a producer, you then hire yourself to hire yourself. It's really weird.
Well, another point on Tom Cruise's humanity, he is inhabited by demon souls that were released by Lord Xenu or whatever. Something about DC-38s. I don't know. If you consider the fact that Scientology's cosmology is correct, he may not be human.
But basically, anything with Tom Cruise, stunt-wise, really, any of the big Mission Impossible stunts are definitely up there. My favourite is still beginning of Rogue Nation. Him hanging onto the outside of the plane by his fingertips. That's the one where he had to wear special hardened contact lenses so he could keep his eyes open and not lose them. The force of the wind. And they also worked out the wrong kind of size speck of dust hitting him at that speed would have killed him. Just so again, it was
that sounds about right.
Even if he was strapped to the plane, it was still obviously a massive risk, and that's part of it. But for me, stunts in general, anything with stairs makes me wince, and I really admire people who can just hurl themselves down stairs head first and somehow come out of it relatively unscathed. You've got to know how you fall with those stunts.
Kieran, do you have a favorite or best stunt?
It is a question I have not thought about, and so probably couldn't tell you. And normally it's so bad to say I'm kind of not watching the stunts. It's just oh, okay, that was a thing. So not particularly. I might get back to you on some later on. Maybe there's probably a Bond stunt in there somewhere.
Yeah, we were in the same boat on that. I couldn't off the top of my head come up with a favorite or best stunt. But 2 that I did come up with are the Mad Max Fury Road. Apparently, he had to tell the people to tone it down, the stunt performers, and also anything Jackass. I was sitting here trying to Google what are the best ones. But yeah, anything from any of those movies or the TV show, because they're real too. Easily my favorite.
I think my favorite one from Jackass movies is Steve-O in the Portaloo on the bungee cord, just going, just being launched into the air, pinging back and forth.
I'm going to offend everybody in the world by saying I've never seen a Jackass movie or an episode at all.
I've never watched the show, but I've seen all the movies.
Also, we would be remiss if we didn't mention Jackie Chan. Yeah.
Although he's not getting a proper segment yet. Jackie Chan is a god.
We'll probably kind of skip over most of the martial artists, because I think that's a whole other kind of conversation, really.
Yeah.
But Jackie Chan is the guy who claims to have broken every bone in his body at least once.
Yes.
So
The thing I love about Jackie Chan movies is you do see the bloopers at the end of him just like messing up.
yeah. I mean, how many times did he have to do the famous stunt from the first Police Story, where he's sliding down Paul Vaughn, like smashing on him basically, and he's just absolutely covered in glass by the time he gets to the bottom of it. But I think he has to do that about 3 or 4 times. So.
And I just remember the story that I want to get in, and I want to do this to praise the stunt performer who put their life on the line, especially in I'm going to say countries where health and safety regulations are not as strict. I may have mentioned this one before, but sort of 2016, 17, because obviously I'm going to university in Wales. We have Gareth Evans come in to talk about the raid and the raid 2. And he was talking about in the first one, I'm assuming you've both seen the raid probably multiple times because it's one of the best action movies of probably the 21st century of all time. In the first one, which I actually prefer of the second one, there's a moment where a guy gets thrown down kind of the stairs and he falls over, and each of the floors has got like a little kind of around the stairwell, it's got like a little kind of barrier almost, and the guy kind of lands like on his back and kind of collapses around it, which they called the backbreaker. And in order to do that, essentially, obviously the whole thing wasn't built. They got maybe 2 floors, and then it was kind of green screen. There's crash mats there at the bottom, and you'd kind of essentially do it like with stunt doubles and little bit, so you're not falling the whole way. And you at one point, I think they were actually essentially pulling somebody by wires over and making him land kind of partially over there and then partially on the other side with a dummy, and then CGIing it together essentially in the final frame, just very quickly splicing it in. Only they hadn't got it 100% right the first time, so they pulled him, and he didn't go down enough, so just smashed into the next floor and was like instantly rushed to hospital, and they're all going, oh god, we're gonna get shut down because of this, and lawsuits and everything. And it's like, they're like, the only reason we could probably do this is because it's in Indonesia to begin with. And then I'm thinking of there's a shot behind the scenes in the second one, kind of just action sequences in general, when there is a shot where in the car chase in the second one, where this camera goes up to Sam probably knows which one I'm on. The camera goes up to one of the cars, moves around, follows the fighting inside, and then jumps out the other side.
And is that basically a cameraman dressed as a car seat?
Yeah, there's a cameraman dressed as a car seat in it, so when it goes past him, he can go and hold it. But not only that, obviously they got to get the camera to that car to begin with. There's literally just a guy strapped to a tray on the side of the car, holding it like that, and there's 2 of them, and the cars are going at full speed down a road. It's ridiculous. It's not a train or anything.
The car chase is one of the reasons why I prefer the Raid 2 over Raid 1. That and Hammer Girl, Baseball, Batman.
Yeah.
Well, Kieran,
although we won't get into martial arts, like there's some stuff out there that's done. It's just insane that they actually genuinely do go, if we die, we die. Let's do it.
Kieran, you speaking of that quote, before we get to other questions, you brought up a really good point. It's very dangerous to be a stunt person, and sometimes they do die. I have an entire list here. I didn't realize somebody died doing a stunt in Top Gun. They crashed their plane and were never found. The Crow, of course, Brandon Lee getting shot. Oh gosh, the Twilight Zone movie where it wasn't stunt performers that died, but the helicopter pilot unfortunately crashed into 3 of the actors, including 2 illegal child actors. Like they were being paid under the table and couldn't shoot.
This is why anytime we mention John Landis is great for American Werewolf in London, we kind of go,
It's not a great. Maybe we'll do terrible film tragedies at some point as an episode. That'll be dark. But I think my favorite one that I ran across was H.B. Halicki, or Toby Halicki. He directed the original Gone in 60 Seconds, which it's awesome. There's so many car stunts. He was a stunt driver. He broke 10 vertebrae doing a big jump. I think it was like over 100 feet or whatever 39 meters is. Yeah, it was crazy. All the work, all the cars that he bought, put into the movie, and then filming Gone in 60 Seconds 2, which is what the Nick Cage movie is vaguely based on that script. He died trying to set up this elaborate sequence with a water tower, and it was supposed to fall. One of the cables snapped, cut down a telephone pole, which landed on him, and he died. So, yeah, really cool director, stunt man, all that. Unfortunately, went out the way that he lived.
Yeah. And the one person we probably won't mention, so we're doing it in passing, is something I haven't yet seen. Is it out yet? The documentary on Daniel Radcliffe's stunt double.
I don't know if it's out yet, but it's imminent. I think it is coming soon. Yeah.
Where the stunt double got paralyzed from the waist down doing is it Deathly Hallows Part 2?
Yeah.
But apparently Daniel Radcliffe's like stayed in contact with him the entire time, like constantly goes to his family. There's a documentary coming out on that, so it is dangerous, and obviously, you know, it is a thing that as time's gone on, regulations have got better, but it wasn't always like that. And one thing I mean, Jacob might mention this later on, but things like car stunts and stunt drivers, obviously, kind of those as well. You know, we think of stunt performers, but the people that are doing the car stunts and physically driving the things, when you're shoving everything else at them, half the time it's not CGI. There is somebody doing the driving. And I know Ben Collins, who was the Stig in Top Gear, and Jacob's like, who, what? Sam knows who I'm on about. Was a stunt driver as well. And also, I know that Jessica Hawkins, who is a female racing driver, drove for W Series and now the Aston Martin Formula One kind of development driver. Also, she'd done stunt driving on a film called Infinite, which I've never heard of. It came out in 2011. It's got some, I'm guessing, decent people. Antoine Fuqua directed it. I know the name. Wahlberg's in it. Chiwetel.
A. Wahlberg or Mark Wahlberg?
Mark Wahlberg.
Okay.
So there are people in it. Toby Jones in it as well, but she also did some of the stunt driving on No Time to Die and Jurassic World Dominion and things like that. So these people also do not get the respect they deserve. You think about something like Fast and Furious. That film is not that entire franchise, and theoretically the amount of money it's made is not possible without all the stunt drivers that we will never know their names.
I am holding my tongue on a Paul Walker joke. Carry on.
I mean, one of the things I think that should be brought back is this kind of also mini making of, like, in the credits of all these films, you know, do like, you know, the big big stunts and things, kind of what kind of effort went into them. I mean, that was one of the reasons we're doing this episode is obviously because The Fall Guy is in cinemas at the moment. That's like, I saw that last weekend, and it is a real kind of love letter to the amount of kind of effort that goes into doing these massive movies with these big action scenes, and that ends very appropriately with a breakdown of like their biggest stunts in the credits, and kind of how they put them together, and what, you know, the efforts the stunt people, you know, went through, you know, to make Ryan Gosling primarily, you know, look good, you know.
Yeah. Well, which brings us on to one of the questions that we got from some strange viewer. Don't know who he is. Should there be an Oscar for best stunts?
Thanks, Dad. Yes, is the short answer. Yes, it should. They should. I mean, and it's been a long time coming. You know, they've been talking about it for years and years. And I know the Academy is famously slow on the uptake, but you know, they did bring in, like, you know, visual effects Oscars, and they've changed the structure of the awards various times over the years. They're just bringing, for next year they're bringing like an Oscar for the for casting direction. You know, so I don't know why they're dragging their heels on this one, really, because stunts is kind of they've been like an essential part of making movies from the very beginning, and it's still unappreciated for some bizarre reason today. You know, and audiences only seem to care if a star goes on a chat show and says, "Oh yeah, I did all my own stunts." Which, unless you're Tom Cruise, you're lying.
And this does very quickly bring in the Danny Trejo thing, because Tom Cruise is like, I will do all my own stunts. I will train for 1,000 hours and do like 200 dead falls for Dead Reckoning to do that. And Danny Trejo comes on going, I'm a professional actor, not a professional stuntman. Like, I am not trained to fall in a certain way not to break my body. If I do that, I'll kill myself. Like, they are the professionals. They know what they're doing. I'm going to let them do their job and everyone is happy. And it's one of these things where you kind of can't disagree with either take.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess to give the devil's advocate argument that I don't agree with, well, where does it end? If we're giving them to stunt people and casting directors, are we gonna have best boy at the Oscars? I mean, do we really need an Oscar for everything? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's already
there we go.
It's already a long enough, boring ceremony that they're cutting important awards out of.
It gets to a certain level, and the stunt teams are some of the biggest departments on a certain level of movie. So it's a big section of the film not really recognised unless you're lumping them in with the whole production, and like the best picture kind of race. I think it's about time, really. I think. Yeah,
and they're essential to action movies. Like you can't have one unless you're going to put your $1 million star at risk at every moment, $1 million plus. No, you're getting a stunt person. So.
And I mean, I know this is the case with obviously other things like documentary and stuff like that, but there's only kind of certain movies that would have stunts in them to begin with, and stunts of a magnitude that would, warrant it. And so it's kind of a thing where, finally action movies are actually going to get some Oscars, admittedly. But you kind of, aside from like action and then maybe the odd Western or sci-fi thing, the amount is not really in there. You're never going to see like a romance movie win for best stunt unless there is a really spectacular, jump out of a plane to rescue their sweetheart or something like that. But if that's the case, do you add it to stunt performer, stunts overall throughout the picture? In which case, surely a film with more stunts is going to have a better chance. So if you just get a film that's like, we're not going to win anything else, we're just going to shove a whole load of action stunts in there, and maybe we'll get on for that.
Or do you think it's going to be like the best original song category? It's like you just pick a stunt that best typifies, the effort that went into your film.
You've got to essentially pick like a 30-second clip.
Yeah.
Well, and what about?
But then that even if you do the 30-second clip kind of idea, that takes away the whole thing. Even just thinking of Dead Reckoning that came out last year, the whole thing with that bike jump is that there's about 15 minutes of build up toward it to make that moment impactful at the thing. So then everything else goes out. So
well, what about stunt nude bodies? Like, I think those. Like, it's not a dangerous stunt, but they are standing in, burying themselves. Like it.
What, best sex body double?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of any kind of body double, I suppose, because I think back in the day, especially, I think certain stars, they had their go-to body doubles, didn't they? Because people, if they had that written into their contract, I will not be shown this particular way, but this fictional version of me will be shown that particular way, and it's going to be consistent. It's going to look like me from film to film, if that's what people think I look like.
And when it doesn't work, when you get things like Blade Runner with falling through the glass, and they're just like, we need a stunt performer, so we just get somebody that doesn't look like her and put her in a wig. It really doesn't work.
Famously, one of the chasers in one of the later Roger Moore films. Or I think he's driving like some big vehicle or something. And I think it goes. It loses part of the bridge. It loses part of the roof of the bridge or something. Like you see, kind of him duck down and duck back up. If you freeze frame it and it duck it down, it's clearly a Chinese dude. It's like not even close to Roger Moore. It's just like the driver they got in was just.
Well, it's great you brought up Roger Moore there, Sam, because Stefan He says if the car corkscrew from James Bond (parentheses Man with a Golden Gun) isn't talked about, why bother having this podcast? They literally ran it through simulations at a university to see if it was feasible.
I think they did it on MythBusters as well.
Well, and did they run the slide whistle through simulations?
They should have done and worked out it was a bad idea.
Yeah, because they on MythBusters they did that one. They also did the boat jump as well.
Yeah,
on MythBusters they've done loads of stuff. I think it's great.
Yeah. I mean, the James Bond franchise got a long kind of history of breaking records, you know, and designing entirely new ways of doing these incredible stunts. You know, I mean, usually Bond is jumping off something really high or doing something real dangerous in the opening scene, and obviously at some point in that sequence you're going to cut around the actor and you're going to bring in these very talented stunt people, you know, to stand in something. Think of you know, and opening of GoldenEye, you know, so that bungee jumping, you know, standing in for Pierce Brosnan, or the, you know, the skydiver parachutes, you know, stands in for Roger Moore, and is it Spy Love Me, the one that opens with the Union Jack parachute? I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, the school it was tested at was Cornell Aeronautical Lab. So they ran the computer simulations and then built an on-site replication of like the ramps and tested it there. So
yeah, because obviously in the film it's like going over a river, isn't it? So it's like
and like a broken bridge that would absolutely be destroyed by the weight of a vehicle.
Yeah.
And just very quickly bringing into Bond and the Fall Guy and my old lecturer, who was part of the completion guarantor team for Casino Royale, where the Aston Martin car flip at that point had the record for the most continuous rolls in one take on film. Apparently the Fall Guy has now beaten that.
Yes, it has.
Taken from Casino Royale. So I have to tell my lecturer that obviously he needs to find a film to take the record back.
And it's a very very impressive stunt on a beach with a car, like a desert vehicle, and I think I seem to remember it immediately follows on the heel of like Ryan Gosling's character saying, "Oh, it's too sandy, I can't do this stunt," and then he somehow does it, and the guy obviously standing in for him actually managed to do it somehow.
I actually
like attraction.
I read an interview with Daniel Craig's stuntman from Casino Royale, and he was talking about like how crazy all the stunts were. He's from New Zealand, so like that really shines. He's like, "Oh, great interview, mate. Thanks for having me." But then he was also Hayden Christensen's double in the Star Wars prequel, or I guess at least Revenge of the Sith, and or maybe Attack of the Clones. I don't know. But he talked about like having to work with Hayden to develop the fighting style, take on like the character. And so it's interesting hearing from him about like, yeah, he's a stunt guy, but what is he doing to contribute to the character through his martial arts, his gymnastics, you know, all those different aspects that you do see on screen, where it's not just an Asian guy in a car or a goateed guy pretending to be Vin Diesel in XXX.
And then you get somebody like Christopher Lee, who is then like, you know, at the point where he had the record of the most sword fights on screen, coming in for Attack of the Clones, and he's like, unfortunately, I won't be doing the sword fighting because I just physically can't do it anymore. But I've got somebody that very much look like me doing the sword fighting.
So did Yoda, I bet.
I think he said something like that. James Scrett was saying his hands could still move as they needed to, but his feet didn't work that way anymore. I mean, he was about 80. It's like he can't keep up with like, the footwork, you know. So like for close-ups, you know, it's still him. But,
and
you know,
also the guy who played Darth Maul, Ray Park. Yeah, I've only ever seen him in things where he plays a silent martial artsy character.
That's his thing. Yeah, that's because the problem with Ray Park is he hasn't got a very intimidating voice.
It was the same with David Prowse as well, which is the reason why they got James Earl Jones to him, because David Prowse was from the West Country. And so Darth Vader with a West Country accent is not going to sound intimidating. Bill Bailey did a whole sketch on it ages ago. You know, you're a traitor with a rebel alliance, take him away. It's like, it's not going to sound intimidating.
That sounded better than he sounded, actually, Kieran.
Very quickly, we should finish off all the little bits of questions before we run on. We've got a vote for a favorite stunt, the truck flip in Dark Knight. And as much as I say that essentially The Dark Knight is a decent action kind of crime movie that is made infinitely better by Heath Ledger's performance, that is a very nice shot of the truck flip.
Yeah.
I'll give it that.
Well,
And I do appreciate, I will also say Tenet, where it's just like they tried all the ways to not have to crash a plane into an airport, and then decided the easiest way to actually do this, and probably the most cost-effective way, is to crash a plane into an airport.
That's where I was going, is Nolan just kicks it up a notch. And, you know, the joke during Oppenheimer was, oh, he's going to set off a nuke.
Yeah. The joke at the moment is that he said he'd be open to doing a horror movie if the script was really fantastic, and everyone's like, please don't, because he'll actually try and open up a portal to hell. And the actual thing says, can we not do that, please?
Yeah, the practicality of stunts versus when you can just tell it's CGI, or when it's the Marvel movies and it's mostly green screen and that kind of stuff. Like, not that there isn't choreography or any of that to some of the performances, but
yeah.
There is
I think it does. When you get a certain amount of CGI kind of additional stuff around the kind of the in-camera kind of stuff, it does tend to remove something. I mean, I think we're just too trained, kind of just too used to watching films like that. You know, our eyes are too well trained, to pick out like something that doesn't look quite right, that's clearly been assembled after the fact. And
it's an interesting thing. Yeah, there is a discussion starting. I'm not sure of the entire argument. I think it's probably going into academia as well. The whole notion that a lot of these films, the selling point is that these things were done for real.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, Nolan, like half of the selling point of a Nolan film, let's be fair, half of it is Nolan, half of it is the practical effects. Like, this should not be a thing, because saying it's done for real is kind of giving away half the secrets that you'd already expect anyway. So there's a weird relationship with verisimilitude, where the advertising point is that this is real life.
Yeah, there was a certain kind of magic to like earlier days of Hollywood, where the audiences were a lot less canny about how these things were done. It was like a magic trick. It was like, they have definitely lost something there.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, like, you could tell so often when it's CGI, and that's what I think they have to sort of sell it that way, because otherwise someone like me is not going to be impressed. I'm just going to go, action movie. But if I'm writing about an action movie and I know, that happened for real, well, I mean, that is it's more impressive than doing something in a computer. Doing something, not putting your life on the line, is infinitely less impressive. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. The lengths that these stunt performers, doubles, all that have to go to sometimes is very impressive.
I mean, I have always said that essentially Avengers, I think, should be nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. But that is another thing. But speaking of people that put their lives on the line, shall we get cracking with the main section of the show? Because this has gone on for a while, and we'll get told off for doing a 3-hour show at some point. So, I mean, Sam was saying that we've got stunts right back to the beginning, and there's obviously, even before film, you've got histories of circus and circus performers and, things like that. And I read a very quick article. So there is analysis out there. It's not particularly relevant. A very quick article that was called The Circus in Early Cinema, Gravity, Narrative and Machines, looking at the way circuses and circus performance were presented in early cinema and the way it's gone across. It's not particularly relevant, but obviously this was a thing. And so that was the main attractions of people doing miraculous things and dives and knocks and falls and stuff like that, which is carrying over today. And I may talk about Penn and Teller's point of view on it later. But one of the people eventually, when you move from this kind of cinema of attractions, which is what it's been now known as, even though some people are now arguing that it's not a cinema of attractions, it's much more kind of intelligent than that, in kind of up until about sort of 1915, 16, and then moved into like a cinema of narrative, as it were, in which case, we have storytelling, and therefore these stunts, you're not just watching them to see somebody doing a pratfall. It's not just shooting as it were. And actually, even when you get early television, something like in the UK in the early 1950s, very beginning of television, you had a show called Night at the Palladium, which essentially it was live. It was music hall that they streamed to the TV, and it literally just was somebody filming music hall acts, you know, and like games on stage and that kind of thing. So there's a history of all these kind of traditional kind of entertainments
Well,
going into these
real
kinds
quick
of things.
on the cinema of attractions, you know, as derogatory or
Yeah.
whatever. If we're looking at it as a media as the message perspective, they were shown in like vaudeville shows, which
Yeah.
I'm sure you're getting to that too. But like, it's weird how TV and cinema, they're all connected to vaudeville shows.
Yeah, and all connected to fun fairs and those kind of like big top events. You know, when it first started, cinema, before you had cinemas, you know, films were shown as sideshow attractions at fun fairs, and what was going to be next to it, you were going to have the circus performance, you were going to have kind of the step up to see the boxing matches kind of thing. All these things kind of come into it.
Somnambulists.
Somnambulists, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of Hitchcock's film, The Ring, where it was set up like a fun fair, and kind of the whole thing is essentially somebody beats the fun fair's kind of main boxer, and the whole love triangle starts from there. And cinema was essentially early enough started with it, which always makes me laugh. Scorsese's thing that Marvel films are just theme park rides, and you go, Scorsese, where were films first shown? They were shown essentially at amusement parks. Let's tone it down here. You know, and the year after, the Lumiere brothers' dad going, keep the paints because it's not going to make any money. This kind of invention you've got will disappear in a few years' time, so make as much money as you can. Don't give it to anyone else. If only they would know where we are now. But, you know, when you get actually realizing it, I've just checked the date, and literally 2 months before film starts, on October 4th, 1895, because I believe it was December 1895 that you had the World Fair with the Lumiere brothers presenting the kinematograph, you have the birth of one of the great silent stars of all time, Buster Keaton, or Joseph Frank Buster Keaton. How did he get his name again? I can't remember, Sam. How did you reckon he got his name?
I think it was his parents in their vaudeville act throwing him around, and he often lands on his head, but he seems to get up miraculously unscathed. So,
yeah, there's. I'm just finding now wiki because live research. After the child fell down a long flight of stairs without injury, an active friend named George Pardee remarked, "Gee whiz, he's a real buster." After Keaton's father began to use the nickname to refer to the youngster.
That's what I love about like that era of life is a kid falls downstairs and you come up with like a fun nickname for him and not rush him to the hospital. Because everyone was like, you know, smoking cigarettes next to him and possibly drunk.
Here's the thing though, I'm seeing, again, this is on Wiki, so please correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the chat or years later finding this. Apparently, in Keaton's retelling, he was 6 months old when the incident occurred, and Harry Houdini gave him the nickname, though the family did not get to know Houdini until later. So there you go. Everything's connecting together with early cinema.
Not a lie at all.
That seems like a story that grows in the telling, doesn't it?
Yeah, what was it? The story of the fisherman. When I caught the fish, it was this big. When I went to the pub, it was this big. When he met the wife, it was this big. You know. So he kind of went into the early films and in the silent era doing bits and pieces. He's with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. He was with for a lot of the time. Eventually became mates with Charlie Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy as well. Gave him some early work, and then he starts going into kind of the bigger productions and even the shorts, and becomes known for essentially kind of three things: deadpan expression, pork pie hat, and ridiculous stunts. That's what he's known for, essentially. That's it. And just like deadpan slapstick. So you get some early moments like in Cops, which is a really nice, it's only like 20, 25 minutes long, 18 minutes, where you've got some really inventive moments. There's a big plank of wood on like a big fence, one of the planks, and it kind of spins around, and there's like a load of slapstick going on there. You've got moments where he kind of goes into the road and you've got the headlights coming at him when he ducks, and it's two bikes and they go side by side. Proper old school stuff. And probably one of the ones he's most well known for, and probably the GIF that's the most well known for. Eventually in 28 he does Steamboat Jr., where he's standing in front of a house and the whole front of the house falls down over him, but he's standing directly in the path of the window, so it goes over him. And that's the kind of thing where if you've miscalculated, you're dying. Like there's no.
Didn't they work out he had like 3 inches of clearance around him? Basically, it was like that narrow.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that you don't do today for real. You probably don't do for real about 3 months after they did it. But he was essentially always almost dying. So when he does Sherlock Jr., despite the fact I've literally just done a review for it for the film magazine, I cannot remember the date of Sherlock Jr. There's a stunt where 24. Okay, so it's before the one I'm talking about. There's a stunt where he's kind of running along the top of a train. He swings off the water tower, kind of falls down, and then all the water from the water tower kind of gushes on him. Well, hey, like Morecambe and Wise is Singing in the Rain sketch. The trouble is, because he was doing a couple of takes, the one take, kind of the water went on him with such force that he kind of fell back, and his neck kind of landed on like the actual railway line. And I think it cracked. I'm not sure if it was back or part of his spine or one of his like spinal kind of like joints that they didn't realize until like a week or so later. He went for a check and was like, oh, yeah, you've cracked that. It's the kind of thing where it's like, if there's anybody else, he would have been instantly paralyzed.
Yeah, didn't they notice he was just having more headaches than normal or something? It was like, it wasn't
Something
really
like that. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. The back of Keaton's neck slammed against a steel rail on the ground, causing him to black out. The pain was so intense that he had to stop shooting later, and he had blinding headaches for a week after.
Yeah.
Oh, Sherlock Jr. came out in 1924. They found out that he got the fracture from a doctor in 1935, 11 years later. The doctor informed Keaton that he'd broken his neck during the accident years earlier and not realised it. Yeah, this is the kind of moron that he was. It really is just like, we're going to do it. And everyone just went, okay, yeah, if you want to go do it, go for it.
I suppose one thing about like the sound stars of that era, obviously a lot of them were, obviously they designed their own stunts, but more often than not, they were also directing their own pictures as well. So it's like, it was literally, it was his whole vision. It was like my way or the highway kind of thing. Yeah, this is my project. I'm the star. I'm the director. I'm going to do what I like. You can't stop me.
Pretty much. I had a point going on from that. So he's essentially there's several that he's known for. Sherlock Jr. is one. The General's one. Steamboat Bill Jr. is one.
By the way, the one from the General, with the train, he's like trying to pick up, I don't know, like wood blocks, or I don't know if they're metal or wood, but like
they're like railway sleepers, aren't they? So they're big solid bits of wood basically, and he's throwing them on each other to kind of move them along. He's kind of it's kind of doing almost like a domino kind of effects. It's like rebuild the track in time for the train.
Almost like Wallace and Gromit later on, laying the track down.
And he's riding on the front of the train, and like it's not going very fast, but still he's riding on the front of a train.
Buster Keaton does like trains. That's part of his thing. But yeah, so he does ridiculous stuff. And I mean, in Sherlock Jr., the second half of that is he essentially jumps into a film where the scene keeps changing and he goes to this like fantasy wonderland that gives loads of excuses for random stunts. There's the famous one where he's in a car that gets out of control essentially, and so he like rides along like on some train tracks at one point. There's got a gap in it, and 2 cars or like vans come along and make a bridge right at the moment he crosses, and you've got that one shot of him side by side on going towards the train and ducking as the train goes past, which I think is probably like a rear view projection, but it's still great fun. But this one, Our Hospitality, came out in 1923 before a lot of those ones. And it's interesting because a lot of his early stuff is kind of excuses for stunts and bits of slapstick, whereas Our Hospitality is essentially a Western with some stunts and a bit of slapstick in. It's like the sets are gorgeous. People have gone like, "Oh, John Ford, eat your heart out," because some of the shots are genuinely amazing. And half of it is essentially a train ride that they throw a couple of gags into. It's quite funny. There's bits where the track would come up and there's like a log that's kind of fallen over. So instead of moving the log years earlier, they just built the train track over it, and so the thing goes up and does like a miniature over the top kind of cartoon style. And there's a bit where there's a donkey and they can't move the donkey out of the way, so they just reach down and pull the entire train track along a bit and just move it round. But it's like it's a proper narrative, it's a proper story, almost melodrama kind of thing, with some trademark Keaton kind of humor and slapstick. But really, the main reason like this is known for stunt moments is the waterfall section right at the end, which is hilarious because we talk about people dying in Keaton. Apparently, he's shooting stuff by the river at one point. He fell in, and the tide was so strong that essentially the rest of the cast and crew found him 10 minutes later, down shore, unconscious, washed up. So, and then he got back up and like, okay, let's recreate this. So the big waterfall that you eventually see was recreated on a soundstage. And although kind of that bit is obviously recreated, and essentially he has to do a stunt where there's a log overhanging this waterfall, and he's on the cliff top there, and coming along the river is the love interest that's about to fall over and drop down the waterfall. So he ties a rope to himself, ties it to this log branch, and then does this beautifully timed swing out under the waterfall, catch the woman, and swing back. And although it's obviously a doll kind of dummy that they've replaced the falling lady with, it's genuinely him tying himself up there with a bit of rope and swinging out to grab him. You go, you just wouldn't do that now. Like, I think the only person that would is Tom Cruise, and even then there'd be about three other harnesses.
I was going to say she wasn't the only dummy involved there.
There we go. Hey.
But I mean, there was like a different attitude to it. These kind of early comedy stars. They're kind of obviously all coming from that kind of mostly coming from that vaudeville background. They used to perform and they used to try to make the audience gasp, and keep them entertained, keeping them transfixed on them. I mean, like some of the most famous stunts, like Harold Lloyd's Safety Last and Laurel and Hardy, and I think it's Liberty. Both of those, they're these iconic kind of scenes where they look like they're like miles up in the air, like dangling off buildings, and just a sheer drop away from certain death. And there's a bit of trickery going on in both those films because of camera angles and kind of false perspective and stuff. They're not quite as high up as they look like they are.
Yeah.
But they're still high up enough. It is still like, it's dangerous.
It's still high up enough that there'd be an issue if they kind of slipped and fell, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not taking anything away from them. I mean, that's still like, it's just so much braver and more kind of bold than most things you see today. But I think it's just different attitude, isn't it? It's giving like the audience, it's pure for the audience benefit. Keep them kind of glued to the screen and give them like a real exciting time.
Yeah, and again, the interesting thing about this is that before that, you kind of had kind of almost stunt films in a way. These are kind of holdovers from like almost the trick photography films of yesteryear by this point, which is worrying. Not even 30 years after film's been invented, there's already yesteryear that we had these kind of Méliès style trick films. It was they're there to surprise and amaze and make people gasp for their spectacle, and it is. The whole film looks glorious, and that's the thing. It's not just there for the stunts. Almost the stunts are secondary in a way. It's integrating stunts into a whole kind of feature-length narrative that's there, which is something which is either very rare or kind of pretty much not done up until that point. Even Keaton's earlier films, a lot of Chaplin's films are kind of sort of at max sort of 25-30 minutes. You get one or two that go for longer, but you don't really combine the stunts with them. They're more melodramas or stuff like that.
Even like their early kind of what you call feature films are only like they're usually still under an hour, aren't they, or just touching an hour? That was like a really long film for that kind of that thing at the time.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, other people are doing stuff in different places. German expressionism and Russian kind of experimental montage theory stuff. But it's again, those are different mediums in terms of incorporating stunts and kind of action sequences into a narrative film like this. It was quite rare to do, and kind of our hospitality kind of went, this can be done in a very well commercially received film, and this kind of opened up the floodgates for him to do stuff like Sherlock Jr. and the General and all these other things. So our hospitality
Battleship Potemkin had stunts. All right,
it came out a couple of years after this. Potemkin was 25, 26?
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I want to say. Yeah, you're thinking about the Odessa Steps sequence?
Oh, yeah.
Just
because nobody watches the rest of it. We just watched that
I have
sequence
watched
in
the
film
entire
school.
thing, thank you.
Oh, I've had it on.
I'm not sure if I've seen the whole thing or not. I don't remember.
I don't remember that much of it, and the Odessa Steps bit is the bit I remember, but I have seen it all. It may have been like on half my screen as I'm watching something else at the same time, but I have technically sat through it all. But the Odessa Steps, yeah.
Well, and we talked earlier about like how stunts are now done like in camera, or not in camera, but lots of different angles and cuts and CGI. Like, I guess there's a chance the people in Russia at that time would have liked that because there's montage to it, creating those effects.
Yeah. I was going to say, half the stuff of you're thinking of the carriage going down the steps and everything happening like that. Half of that is essentially Eisenstein testing out his montage theories and playing around with that. Most of Keaton's stunts are very much just, here's some setup, right, one shot, here's the stunt. And that kind of goes very much back to things like the cinema of attractions, where people have argued that part of it is essentially that you've got the limited viewpoint. So you can't actually move. There's no editing back in those days because there was limited editing and shot puts together. So what you saw was real, and that was replicating reality of literally just plonk somebody there and show them something. So I think a lot of Keaton stunts, because there's a lack of cutting for quite a bit of it. So, for example, even the rope waterfall swing, they'll collect the dummy. So the main bit is done for real. And then there's a slightly tighter version at the tail end of that where he kind of drops her off so that she can move around and get up. But the main swing is done for real. And even in the second part, although there's a cut, he's still swinging. So there's kind of less montage in there. And so part of the allure of these stunts in the kind of Keaton days is the fact that they're either done for real or sometimes they were kind of done by magic tricks. And a lot of the time it was a combination of the two. There was more kind of almost traditional non-filmmaking art from kind of circus performers, from magic, from the sound and stage, built in and shot like that, and then just combining kind of the way the cinema can be used. And it's really good. And Keaton is, along with Harold Lloyd and Chaplin, one of the founders of slapstick and the big stunts and those kind of things. And if you haven't seen any of Keaton's stuff, just go onto YouTube and just like, if after some like 5-10 minute montage of Keaton stunts, you don't want to find at least a 20-minute like film, like I don't know what's going to do it because they're all glorious.
Definitely.
So yeah, I will hand over from Keaton because we've still got a lot to go.
Yeah, Sam, you have a fun swashbuckler film, and this is actually I remember watching this in one of my film classes. I think
I've never seen it. I don't think I've even ever heard of it. I might have heard of it in passing.
Kieran, you've got to correct that. It's amazing.
Well, sorry, I should say clip shows from it, not the whole one.
It's not a massive commitment, guys. It's only like an hour 40. Get on that. So this
give me my 4-hour Batmans.
So I'm sort of jumping like to the next, I suppose, the next kind of generation really of kind of filmmakers really. So we've had the silent comedy era. This is now kind of into like the Hollywood golden age. So this is Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938. One of the first like major Technicolor films. probably one of the most famous versions of this kind of particular story. I mean, this is particularly iconic. This is the reason why in the 70s Disney gave us uncomfortably sexy foxes. No, that the
Oh,
weird.
this,
The
oh,
weird
this is
kind
the
of,
Errol Flynn
Sorry,
version. Okay.
no,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree about the sexy foxes. I'm just, I was gonna leave it be. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
same
didn't need
here.
to hang you out to dry there, Sam.
Yeah, no, I know about the foxes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just double
yeah.
checking. I know of this film, but I just haven't seen it.
Basically, the Disney version is this, but with anthropomorphic animals. It's exactly the same. They even nick off the same shots from it, and it's same story, pretty much the same characterization of the major players, except they're animals. Reason I kind of picked this kind of to discuss this subject is this stuff from the era where back in the day, the only way you could really do a film with armies kind of massing against each other and then having a big old fight was to actually have an army of stunt people in armor and carrying weapons and doing it for real. Essentially, there wasn't really a trick around that. I mean, take much longer. I mean, you think of Lord of the Rings films of today had a certain amount of people in armor and costumes and stuff, but then they obviously used the VFX kind of developments to expand that and duplicate soldiers.
It was a combination of different techniques.
Yeah,
It was a use
yeah,
of like copying miniatures, the lot.
yeah.
I think
Some early AI, so like all the soldiers moved like individually and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that for Birth of a Nation, it's like the huge full scale real people battles. Which is just crazy.
Yeah, I mean, in this they went to they give such a kind of in theory like a realistic kind of look, verisimilitude that they went to the effort to build a full scale Nottingham Castle set. It was the biggest set at the time, and it held the record, I think, for another 10 years or so. And it was reused for like a number of films afterwards. It was on the Warner Brothers lot for years.
Why am I now thinking of Monty Python? Camelot.
Yes, so literally, this is not a model. They built an actual castle out of wood and painted it. It looks amazing.
And they actually used it, unlike Cleopatra.
Yeah. But this has got obviously it's got no like swashbuckling fun. The performances are exaggerated. You might call it quite campy to the modern eye now. It's very very kind of bawdy and kind of there's nothing subtle about it. Basically, kind of just got to get your eye and kind of just get used to the tone. Basically, and especially with Errol Flynn. I mean, he's a very charming presence, but he's very very over the top and larger than life. But apart from that, I think what kind of this is known for, is just how they mount like the action scenes and the scale of the thing. So, there's an iconic, it's often considered like the greatest sword fight ever put on film. Errol Flynn as Robin Hood fighting Basil Rathbone as Garth Gisborne at the finale, and it goes on for about 5 to 10 minutes, and they just big battle starts off in like the central main hall of the castle, and then the battle kind of as all the soldiers are like pairing off and like fighting each other. Robin and Garth Gisborne kind of get separated, and they're kind of just moving throughout the castle, and just the sword fight just keeps going from there. Though Errol Flynn was quite talented physically, he took pride in doing as much of his stuff as he could. He wasn't especially let's call him especially engaged students. I don't think he really had much time for like the professionals telling him what to do and how to do it. He just kind of muddle through it, kind of just get by on his athleticism, which I think pissed off Basil Rathbone, who was an accomplished fencer. He was a championship level fencer. He was from university. He was like captain of the fencing team. So,
which obviously made him perfect to play Sherlock Holmes starting the following year, because Sherlock Holmes is a very good boxer, and I think at one point a fencer as well.
Yeah. I mean, the scene probably that kind of sums it up for me in terms of just the sheer amount of different kind of stunt work that was available. It's the scene where Robin's been captured. It's towards the end of the film, and he's been sent for his execution. They bring him through like the streets, on a cart, and then take him up to like the platform, to be hung in front of an audience. And throughout that scene, several things happen. So his like followers are hidden among the crowds, and they've kind of planned a daring escape from him. So one of them shoots his noose, to free him, with an arrow. From there, Robin,
wait,
while
he shoots a noose to like free him from this mortal coil, or
yeah.
I guess he's on the gallows, so he does it. Shoot the rope.
I was picturing he shot him a noose.
No.
That
is an idea.
So he's already up there he's already up there with the noose around his neck and the rat ready to, to pull the lever. So one of his followers, shoots the rope, and that releases him. And then from there, he jumps off the platform, still with his hands tied behind his back, onto a waiting horse and rides away. Now, that's one of the few stunts that Errol Flynn definitely could not do. It's like he was a skilled horse rider, and he was athletic, but even he couldn't jump from a high platform onto a horse without the use of his hands. So they got someone else in to do that. So from then him and his party can ride through the streets, pushing guards out of the way. I think at one point, a guy was at the top of the hangman's, what goes it? Is it a gibbet? The thing that holds the rope? Can't remember anyway.
The actual scaffolding.
Yeah. Anyway,
no
there's guy up the ladder at that point. I think he's trying to retrieve the rope or something, and when they ride off, his ladder goes flying, and he's literally he must like just be thrown like 20 feet like out, off this platform. So the ride for the street. Yep.
You are correct. It is a gibbet.
Thank you. So the ride for the streets, guards going everywhere. Friar Tuck pulls a cart out in the path of the pursuing guards. About 3 horses crash into it, and the riders fly over it, in full armor. And they get to the main entrance to the city, which has got this big portcullis gates. And most of the pass get through, but the gate comes down before Robin can get through. So what he does, he cuts the rope of the portcullis and rides it up to the tower of the gates, and then down the other side, basically. And again, that's the other stunt that Errol Flynn absolutely could not do. He could not ride a rope up this stone kind of gate and over the other side. Throughout the scene as well, it's one of the more infamous things about the film. How do you think in the 30s they simulated lots of people getting hit with arrows?
By shooting them with arrows is my guess.
I would suggest. Oh, I was going to say the other one would be you haven't already started with arrows, and then you have invisible string and pull them all out and reverse it.
Yeah,
that's smart.
There are ways. Yeah, they have done that over the year, and I think for Kurosawa for Throne of Blood.
Throne of Blood, yeah.
Yeah, for now there were arrows traveling on wires, I think, so they're very controlled in terms of how.
I know.
Although he did shoot a few for real at Mifune, because just to keep him on his toes, I think.
Yeah, in terms of the reversing, where I got the idea from, that's how in The Thing, when the dog thing is kind of attacking tentacles, the other dog things. It was just puppets, and they had them all at once and pulled them away and just reversed the shots.
Yeah. So basically,
I got mine from Sam said it's the 1930s.
Yeah. So basically, they had a championship archer doing any shots that actually required you to hit human targets. So a guy called Howard Hill. He's listed credits as captain of the archers, and he's in the archery competition midway through the film that Robin kind of takes part in. But basically, what they did, they just paid the stunt players $150 per arrow shot into them, and they were just protected by having a steel breastplate and some balsa woods.
I think we still do that for our health insurance.
Hoping the guy
here.
doesn't miss.
Yes. So basically, still breastplate to stop it actually entering your body, and the boss would apparently to make it look like the arrow is actually going into something and having purchased. So it looks like it's shot into something, basically. Yeah. They just paid all these poor extras a lot of money to be shot repeatedly throughout the
amount of stuff that people do that let's be honest, it hasn't stopped. And if you're low budget now, you still do the same thing. You know, I was saying before, does all the stuff they did on Evil Dead to try and make it like count. So they did things like there's moments where kind of Ash, Bruce Campbell, he's got the shotgun, and there's, for example, a couple of shots where he'll kind of stick one of the Deadites will kind of run out the window, and a couple of seconds later, he'll go to the window and fire up a shot. That is generally him firing a shotgun. And they just went, everyone, this was going to happen, duck. And then they'll do stuff like, okay, it's not necessarily stunt, but it's putting people in danger. There's a shot where the Force, the kind of mysterious POV thing, goes to a window and breaks through the glass, and there's no stunt involved. They just shoved a camera on a plank of wood, shoved a spike in front of it, and ran at a window. It's just ridiculous, the kind of stuff that people did.
Yeah. One of the more famous shots of this is, again, go back to Howard Hill, you know, the archer, is I can't see him during the archer competition, so the apparent winner gets the bullseye, you know, on the on the targets, and then Robin shoots an arrow through it and splits the arrow, so and he wins it. That was done for real, not to the extent
that's the urban myth that it was the real split.
Yeah, but no, it was real, but it was kind of slightly cheated. So it was a special kind of arrow, basically, that split more easily, and then like the second arrow shot was more solid or made from different material.
Now, did
and he was also standing a lot closer to the target than he looks like he is.
Yeah.
Did real Robin Hood actually do that though? I mean, that's
real Robin Hood.
Sam, are we going to tell it?
Yeah, hate to break it to you.
Next, you're going to tell me the leader of the Luddites was fake. I don't know. Oh.
Look, when we get to Christmas time, we're really going to break you.
Yeah. He's on the same lines as King Arthur, basically. He's more like a mythological figure. There possibly were people that they inspired them, but generally it's now accepted that, mythological figure.
That's a bummer.
Folk hero.
Just the sexy fox and Errol Flynn.
I mean, Prince John was real, and he really was a bit of a dick. But
what is he? Was he actually a phony king?
Well, he crowned himself while Richard the Lionheart was away on crusades. Yes. Yeah. So essentially.
Gotcha. Sorry for the British history diversion.
Don't worry, Sam knows it better than me.
Yeah.
I know I learned something new today.
You know that.
So as well as having the the biggest kind of set in existence at this point, this was also for the longest time held the record for employing the largest number of stuntmen on any one production, which you can most clearly see in the big brawl, like in the central hall of Nottingham Castle. There are just so many people in armor and weapons just pairing off and fighting. It's just. I mean, I suppose if they're shooting so many of them with arrows, maybe they'll make sure they always had spares in case something went wrong. Amazingly, I haven't found a record of anyone actually dying during this production. People were injured, but I don't think any of them got particularly injured with the arrows though, because they employed a very good archer to do those shots. Basil Rathbone apparently had quite a bad injury. He, while filming Robin Hood's escape from the castle, he was knocked down and trampled by the extras, and got a spear wound in his foot in the process. So it required 8 stitches.
Basil Rathbone will put up with it.
Yeah, I mean, Errol Flynn famously didn't get on with the director of this, Michael Curtis. Mike Curtis, by the way, great everyman, kind of just so kind of such a versatile filmmaker. I mean, he did this, he did Casablanca, he did a few horror films. I think he did pretty much everything basically. And he'd arguably made Errol Flynn with Captain Blood, their earlier swashbuckler, that kind of made him a star, and that was one of his kind of first big films. But they famously kind of clashed, and did not get on. They're very different kind of two dominant kind of personalities, kind of vying for attention, basically. But apparently during one fight, Errol Flynn was jabbed by an actor. With a sword, like a sharpened sword. Most of the swords had like blunt ends or like protectors on them, and he nearly got quite badly cut by this guy who was using like such a live blade. And so he asked him kind of, why didn't have a guards on the point? And the stuntman apologized profusely and explained that Michael Curtis had instructed him to remove the safety feature in order to make the action more exciting. Flynn then reportedly climbed up the gantry to where Curtis was standing next to the camera, took him by the throat, and asked him if he found that exciting enough.
It's a good thing something like that would never happen in the 2020s. I mean, especially with someone like Alec Baldwin. I don't know. That'd be crazy.
James Baldwin.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm just realizing now it was Captain Blood that we watched in film school and not this.
I mean,
not Casablanca.
I mean, they do share a lot of DNA, in terms of like, Errol Flynn being a charming rogue and everything, and a big sword fight with Basil Rathbone. But it does share those two films.
Are there stunts in Casablanca?
No, I was just thinking it's done by the same director.
Yeah.
Do the flip again, Sam.
So someone
running
might
down
run.
the runway.
Yeah, so someone might run a bit at one point. Yeah.
Try not to get hit by a plane.
Maybe there's flair bartender tricks.
Yeah. I've just remembered that Claude Rains is a shared cast member with this in Casablanca. He plays King John in this, and obviously he's Louis in Casablanca. So he obviously didn't have problems working with Michael Curtis.
He managed to make himself visible again for this.
Yes.
And he wasn't a robot.
Yeah. I mean, he's a weird casting for Prince John. I mean, Prince John was quite young at this point. If we're going by like the vague history that this film's based on, I think Prince John was meant to be like in his late 20s, and Claude Rains was about 50 at this point. So, I suppose they just wanted an evil sound, a devious sounding British man. I suppose just. Pick one. There are plenty in Hollywood at this point. But yeah, so this is kind of, for me, this is what my favourite version of Robin Hood. I mean, I really didn't understand the Ridley Scott, Russell Crowe one from a few years back. It's like the default for historical epic now is gritty and as real as possible. And I don't think always needs to be. I think you lose a lot of the charm and a lot of the magic, I suppose. This is very much like we're telling this fable in an exciting, enjoyable way. It looks great. It's exciting to watch. It's funny, and we don't care if it's a bit goofy as well. It's a bit some of its jokes are a bit corny or kind of some of the performances are a bit kind of a style from another era. It's just really good fun to watch, and I just think the scale of the thing and the amount of different kind of skills these stunt team had to employ, like to bring this to life, or something else. Someone else I think who may have had some sort of a role in this film. Again, a link to kind of more modern films. Bob Anderson, the sword master in for Lord of the Rings. He was a part of the team that trained up Errol Flynn, I believe, in this. I mean, there's one of the many documentaries on the Lord of the Rings extended DVDs. One of the stunt players who gets played the Uruk-hai would say she had to go home and said to her mum, "Oh, got trained by this guy, Bob Anderson," and her mum went like, "Wow!" Said, "Oh my God, he worked with Errol Flynn. He trained Errol Flynn," and she responds with, "Mum, who's Errol Flynn?"
Oh, no. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
I'm sorry, you say that, and I'm immediately having flashbacks to Zombieland, where she doesn't know who Bill Murray is.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
but just scale, but the range of skills that someone from the number of people who got shot with actual arrows and nearly got lost fingers and eyes, in the sword fighting scenes. It's I think back then when you did have to do stuff for real, it was quite hard to do something of this scale with like using trickery, to fool the audiences. I think you had to do it real, real fashion to a certain extent.
Well, you have to use like sort of trick mirrors and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it was one of the more expensive films at the time for Warner Brothers, and they worried for a long time that it wasn't going to do too well, and it became one of their biggest hits of of the decades, and they were going to do a sequel right up till the outbreak of the war, and by the time by the time that they got out of that in 45, kind of appetite had kind of been lost, really. So it's a shame, but this is a really fun movie worth checking out, and impressive stunts for the time, I'd say.
Nice. I mean, especially people getting shot with arrows. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Well, I was, really struggling to pick a movie because there's, another Tarantino stuntman-ish film. But, I mean, I went with the one that I think is better befitting the topic of stunt performance, and that is Death Proof.
And it also, I think, better befits the old style second cut of reappraising films as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, look, it was panned at the time, but I
love it.
Yeah. It's a Tarantino. They were tired of him. I don't know.
Put it this way, I think it's definitely his worst film, and Planet Terror is ultimately the better part of the double bill, but it's not an awful film itself.
I think with Tarantino, you've just got to understand the films he's referencing. I mean, it's very much like like a 70s exploitation film, isn't it? And you've got to get in that mindset.
Well, and I'd say you don't even have to know the films. You can just tell from the style that he's putting in, the jump cuts that he uses, the damage to the film. Like, he's going for something. It's not something I've necessarily encountered. One thing I never noticed before is the title card where it says Quentin Tarantino's Thunderbolts, and then it cuts away to a black screen that says Death Proof, and then it cuts back to the feet. It's a lot of feet in this movie.
It's a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting about this movie is the way Tarantino is able to balance his tendency for male gaze to just a crazy level, and feminist storytelling. It's a very fine line that I think he's able to walk well in both creating something that fits the 70s exploitation car movie genre, but also something that is fitting in the modern age. Something I really don't think I'd ever thought about before, too, is that it does take place contemporaneously. And I was asking, my memories of it are the cars and the outfits, the old film, look to it. And I forgot
my memory is the intro 5-10 minutes of all the different trailers and stuff. Because is it this one, or is it for Planet Terror that Thanksgiving came from? I think it's
they both have trailers on the Grindhouse cut.
That's what I'm saying, because there's now
because there was Machete as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, and there's another one that's been made, because Thanksgiving was the third one based on this.
I mean, the other big trailer in that hasn't resulted in film yet, which I'm devastated about, is Edgar Wright's Don't.
Yeah. So good.
I'm kind of fortunate that the cut I had was just Death Proof. It would be one thing if I was watching the whole experience for Grindhouse, but I was just watching it for this movie. And
the other one that got made from those trailers is Hobo with a Shotgun.
Ah, yes.
Nice.
So you had Machete in 2010, Hobo with the Shotgun, and now you've got Thanksgiving. So yeah, Edgar Wright's like, damn, I've got to make Don't now.
But somebody's going to tell him, don't. Maybe that's what happened. He was going to make it, and someone said, don't. Yeah, and, the main character of the movie is Stuntman Mike. And he's played by Kurt Russell. And the reason Tarantino cast Kurt Russell was because he was like, oh, he's been in, Miracle and some other lame Oscar Beatty style movie, just some drama, and he was like, not that there's anything wrong with those, but I want the audience nowadays to know Kurt Russell's a badass, and so he made this role.
I mean he's got a specialty. His specialty is taking kind of older, slightly past actors, and bringing them back to the mainstream, kind of giving them like another great role, so which she did
Brad
with
Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio,
Travolta, Pam Grier, so.
Yeah, he brought Kurt Russell into this really cool role. And then the other thing that sort of brought the concept along was what we talked about with CGI. He was like, when is there good stunt work? When's the last great car chase you saw? And, he named like a couple movies, but he said that nowadays you don't get, the really cool stunt work, the really cool practical work like you used to back in the day. And so, obviously he brought in like a bunch of, I don't know if Rosario Dawson was a huge name at that time, but obviously her profile has increased since then.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Yeah.
Very, very, very early role for her.
Very shockingly, too, because she's so different to what she plays now as the hot actress dressed as a cheerleader.
Yeah.
I was like, who is that? I knew she was in the movie, but I was so confused. And it's like, it's a great cast of people. But the standout one, Rose McGowan, that's the other real big one. But the standout is Zoe Bell, who was Uma Thurman's stunt double in Kill Bill. She's another New Zealand stunt double. And she was very shocked, when she found out she was going to be sort of in a leading role in the film. But it's a Tarantino movie, so there's kind of two halves to it.
I would say she doesn't, a bit like say Ripley in the Alien, in the first Alien. She doesn't start out as the lead, but she kind of becomes that. She kind of grows into that role, doesn't she?
Yeah, for sure. And there's the other, there's so many big stunt names that he brought in because he's a nerd. But the biggest one is, oh God, now I have to like make my stupid thing scroll all the way up. Jeff Dashnaw.
Live research.
Who, Jeff Dashnaw has done stunts and stunt coordinating for like 224 movies. So it's just a very long IMDb page. Like the latest one on there is Civil War. He was the stunt coordinator for that, but he did stunts in Terminator 2. He did the Workaholics Game Over Man movie, Baywatch, The Hateful Eight. I mean, I guess naturally, just so many movies, so many different styles of movies, and whether he's coordinating or doing them himself. And yeah, so Tarantino made this a love letter to the stunt people, and the way he did it is there the two halves. Like I said, the first half, there's this group of girls in a bar down in Austin, Texas, and they're meeting these people in the film industry there, and it's just really fun story, fun chemistry between all the actors. But really what it's there to set up is Stuntman Mike and his sadistic ways, because he stalks them. He knows who they are. He he listens to one of the characters, Julie, on the radio. She's a DJ, and he knows that there's this special poem you need to say to Butterfly, who's kind of the main-ish character of the first half. She's played by Vanessa Ferlito, who I hadn't really heard of outside of this, but apparently she's in a lot of random things that I've seen. So, but yeah, she's so good actually in this role. But the stuntman Mike, he gets her to give him a lap dance, which is one of the big scenes in the first half of the film. And then, they all leave, and he's driving Rose McGowan home, and he puts her in like the camera side of his stunt car, kills her, and then rams into the main, who you thought were the main characters of the film in the first half of the movie. And there's these 4 different shots of it where, and I'm guessing there was, it was practical. I don't exactly know how they did it, but, one of the characters, her foot's hanging out the window, so her leg comes off and goes flying. Another one gets killed just like impact glass. Another one flies out, way up in the air and lands on the road. And then Butterfly, she gets her face run over by the tire in like one of the most brutal shots I've seen in a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, you went full on for this, and we should say as well that the whole point of the title is Death Proof, is that Kurt Russell on his side of the car has been built so that no matter what happens to the car, he can't die in there. So as long as he's there, essentially, he is death proof, and therefore he can go and use it to kill as many people as he wants. He will never get hit.
Yeah, and
in principle.
And not Quentin. Kurt Russell actually had 2 different stunt people. His double was John Casino, who, I didn't click on his IMDb to see what all he's been in. But, apparently the Hunger Games Catching Fire, They Live, Hunger Games Mockingjay. So the Hunger Games movies. That's what he would be most known for. And then the stunt driver for Stuntman Mike was Buddy Joe Hooker. So there's a little bit of meta to the stunt driver having a stunt driver, and there is one shot where you can see pretty well that it's not Kurt Russell driving the car, but
knowing Tarantino, that was deliberate.
Yeah, could. I mean, it's kind of a high up, high angle shot, so like you're not necessarily supposed to be. It's supposed to be that movie magic where you know it's there, but you're not looking for it. You're looking at the action. But us being us, like we're gonna try and see if we can tell who's driving the car. And then the other stunt driver that I saw as the character Kim was Tracy Keane Dashnaw. I guess she's Dashnaw's wife. So. The character Kim, her character is a stunt performer, and so that's where the second half starts off. Is they're in Tennessee. This is a year later. By the way the first half actually ends is Kurt Russell's in the hospital, and a sheriff comes out and is like, he's outraged about the fact that the courts are going to see that the women were all drunk and stoned. Kurt Russell was sober. That he's going to get away with anything if there were even any proceedings. And so a year plus later, Kurt Russell goes to Tennessee, Stuntman Mike. In the first half, that's where, so much of the fun Tarantino conversation is. And they say, why do they call him Stuntman Mike? Stuntman. What does he do? Stunts. And then he has to they're questioning him about the stuff that he did, and he names these probably obscure real TV shows that Tarantino knows about because he's a weirdo. There's also parts where they bring up like all these movies and TV shows that apparently the actresses had no idea what they were saying, but he was like, it'd be a lot cooler if you were into movies, so I put those lines in for you. Also, there's a scene in the first half where he very needlessly kisses several women walking into the bar. I think the male gay stuff is one
Russell
thing.
Or Tarantino?
Tarantino. So, because he's a very weird looking dude. Yeah, he plays the bartender. Yeah, but then the second half, the way it starts off is a black and white sequence where, I guess it's supposed to mimic the color dropping out of damaged, used, circulated prints of exploitation films. And also in the second half, that damaged grain really it takes a step back.
It's like on Planet Terror, Rodriguez. It drops a reel, doesn't it? It's just so they're just a big chunk of the story gone.
I didn't know that. That's really funny.
It's just something that's a great gag.
I didn't realize he leaned into that as well, so it's on my list to watch.
He goes full on for the film degradation kind of thing, and then at one point it just kind of flames out, and then we've lost the reel, and then we're at the finale with no idea how we got there.
Nice. Apparently, that's what the original cut of Death Proof was, because he had to make it shorter to fit in, and so he trimmed a lot of the fat off of it, and what came out was this at times nonsensical movie, and he was like, well, whatever, it fits.
It's one of the things I quite like about it compared to his other stuff, because I think Tarantino can be a bit indulgent, it's just a bit self-indulgent.
Can be.
You know? Okay, he is. He always is, and this kind of forced him to kind of like get some of his worst impulse. I think. I mean, I wonder if cause he's not done a film like under 2.5 hours since Reservoir Dogs, has he? So.
And apparently, kind of the failure of, realistically speaking, of Death Proof kind of knocked him back a bit. And it was like, oh crap, you know, I essentially I can't just do anything I want.
I mean, his whole thing about, you know, I've just done 10 films and I'm quitting. Well, he doesn't count Death Proof among those 10, and he counts Kill Bill as one, so he's already screwing up the.
I mean, it's so stupid to limit yourself like that anyway. Like, just make your movies, man. Like, he's so dumb. Anyway, the second half has the black and white. It's where Kurt Russell is licking Rosario Dawson's feet at one point. Yeah, and then he very casually pretends he dropped his keys and was like, oh, there they are. But yeah, so what happens is they go pick up Zoe Bell at the airport. She's playing a fictionalized version of herself, and you know, they have all these fun stories from their time as movie working people, because her and Kim are stunt performers, and then you have Rosario Dawson's character is a makeup person. She name drops like some famous actress she's working with on a movie in Tennessee at this point. And so, but what Zoe wants to do, because she's from New Zealand, she wants to drive American Muscle. She wants to drive the Vanishing Point 1970 white Dodge Challenger. And it just so happens that there is one there in Tennessee. And so,
strange that.
Right? And they go and check it out. And she wants to do the ship's mast, where she is strapped to the hood of the car. By the way, what do y'all call the front of a car? Is it a hood there?
Bonnet.
The bonnet. Okay, she's on the bonnet or hood. I guess that hoods are bonnets essentially. Yeah, she's on there strapped on with belts, and they're going woo woo. But of course, Kurt Russell has been stalking them, and thus begins the 20-minute chase sequence with real Zoe Bell strapped onto the hood of the Dodge Challenger.
Yeah, that's getting faster and faster and weaving and doing everything. I mean, this is the stunt of the movie, no question.
It is so awesome. Because it's real. It's really her too. But she was talking about in an interview, what makes it really cool is that, you know, usually with the stunt double, you're trying not to show it. But here, they could just put the cameras wherever, show every part of her. Like, there was no worry.
Tell you what, though, can you imagine trying to, like, tell, like, your mother what your next role actually is going to entail? Like, and my character gets strapped to the hood of a car that's for like a chase scene that it's going to take us 5 days to film, and it's going at like 70, 80 mile an hour. Oh, they're going to use like a dummy? No, I'm going to be physically strapped to it. So if the car goes over, I am dead.
Yeah, I mean, Rob mentioned this. Tarantino doesn't have the best reputation in terms of how he treats some of his actors, in terms of what he's asking them to do, and are they up for that and everything. I mean, the Uma Thurman stuff that came out, didn't it? And that was going to hit him wanting it to do. Was that something to do with the car as well? Was it something?
It was in Kill Bill, yeah.
Oh, was it the buck scene?
I don't know. No, but that was
something in part 2, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
No, I think it was something where she was driving and she was asked to like drive fast because he didn't want to use a stunt driver because he wanted the camera right in there, and she didn't feel comfortable with it. She didn't feel she was qualified to do it, and but he kind of put pressure on to do it, and she did end up.
I thought it had something to do with like the way she's crammed into Buck's vehicle in the first one, but
I don't think so.
Maybe not.
Probably that as well, but also there's the fact that Tarantino was very good friends with the Weinsteins. Well, they bankrolled the first half of his career, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what, looking back on that kiss scene or watching it with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, it makes me question, like, what sort of things are being encouraged on the set. But Zoe Bell, at least, apparently really loves him, or was unwilling to say otherwise in her interviews.
Yeah, I mean, she's appeared in all of his films since Death Proof, hasn't she? So.
Yeah. She got to do voice work in Fallout New Vegas. That was fun. Like this really got her like an acting career on top of the stunt performer. So, yeah. So, well, by the way, fun connection with the Hateful Eight. Jennifer Jason Leigh's dad died in the Twilight Zone accident. So,
all right.
Yeah. Yeah. But what happens? The stuntman Mike's chasing them. Finally, there's the big wreck kind of scene. He gets out of his car and he's like, well, ladies, it's been fun. And Kim pulls out a gun and shoots him. And so he drives off. Suddenly he's on the back foot as they chase him. He crashes through a billboard. And then finally they catch up to him and they beat him. They punch him and beat him with a pipe and stuff. And there's your revenge. I guess, Kieran, we talked a little revenge movie last week. This is just violence revenge.
I was going to say
road rage revenge.
Speaking about kind of violence revenge, I forgot that Eli Roth had a very small cameo in this and apparently flew in from doing Hostel Part 2, which I think Tarantino was one of the producers on in some way. I know he wasn't the first one because he came up with the idea whilst floating in Tarantino's pool. So. Tarantino pushed him on to do it and gave him the encouragement and part produced Hostel. So talking about violent revenge films, in terms of violent film, there you go.
Well, you could tell Eli Roth was only there for a day because he says nothing except for one line where the women at the beginning, they're not allowed to bring guys back to a lake house that they're going to. And he's like, here's what we got to do. We got to give them 2 more shots. And then they'll let us come over and hang out. And I do think there's something to Tarantino understanding like the negatives of that kind of masculinity and with Kurt Russell's character too, like his aggression, his uncomfortably overt sexuality, so that's what makes me sort of question, like, was the kiss thing coerced? Was it something they improvised? How did that come about? He clearly has understanding of those concepts in film studies. Yeah. I think when it comes to the male gaze stuff, he just doesn't care. Like, it's there to be salacious.
It's interesting with Tarantino in general because he's so influenced by kind of exploitation films and essentially schlock from kind of the 60s and 70s, where that kind of stuff like male gaze, very schlocky stuff was just kind of par for the course. He's then putting it in his movies with a slight nod and a wink, but then you're going,
he's still doing the same thing, really. He just admitting to it.
Self-aware shots of just a butt are still just a shot of a butt. Now, one thing I would say in his favor is, I mean, there aren't gratuitous boobs. I mean, it's mostly clothes.
It's not Michael Bay,
Yeah, it's clothing and bare feet. And there's a performance to the lap dance. Like, it's not just, we're doing a lap. It's a whole dance.
You'll probably find that the lap dance scene based on a lap dance in another film, to be honest.
Yeah, probably. And then the music with it's so awesome. All the music in this movie's awesome. And then just the way he's able to take it kind of taking place in 2007-ish, and make that fit the look and style of the 70s, like him and his whole team, the costumers, the production design, scoping out if they were shooting on location, which I wouldn't be surprised if they shot in Austin, since that's where Rodriguez is based. There's a film scene down there too. It's a really good movie. So if this is his worst movie, Tarantino doesn't. Kieran, we talked about this last week. He doesn't have any bad movies.
No, I would say that this is the worst one, personally. but it's still not bad at all.
Yeah, and I personally didn't really get on board with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I kind of appreciate it for what it does well, but actually it didn't particularly.
Yeah. The thing with Hollywood, as people said, it's kind of Tarantino's least Tarantino movie ever.
Well, that's why it's my favorite one. I think like I like that it's more about movies in the way that his movies are usually about these are the movies I like, and that one was about I'm actually gonna kind of look at film history and people, the sort of other side of the movies with I'll talk about it later. Whatever. We'll have an episode where I could trick it in. But the tough thing about talking about Tarantino is he is often associated with either the teenager who just got into movies or the guy whose favorite movie is Fight Club and has never expanded. It's tough saying I really like Tarantino, but I do. His movies are good.
Yeah.
And I'll never put him in my top 10 directors just to avoid those conversations and accusations and assumptions. But I really like his work a lot.
We could do an episode in the future, pick your favorite Tarantino film and then also talk about the other film it is mostly based on.
Or
the Kill
pick
Bill,
a better
you have
film
to
instead.
talk about Lady Snowblood from 1972.
Yes.
No,
Hateful Eight, you'd have to talk about the great silence.
And The Thing.
And Django for Django. Yeah. Oh my God! I just realized that Kurt Russell is kind of meta in that sense. Wow, that's pretty funny. I've never thought about it in terms of The Thing. I've only thought about it in terms of spaghetti western.
Yeah, The Thing, and obviously half of Hateful Eight soundtrack is from The Thing.
I didn't realize that either. I just knew it was Ennio Morricone.
It's unused Ennio Morricone score for the Thing, and Tarantino was like, "Hey, can I use that? Because you didn't use it for The Thing." And he was like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And so that's what's in The Thing, because obviously snowed in and paranoia in a kind of claustrophobic environment in the snow. It's with Kurt Russell, so yeah, that's what it's from.
Nice.
Tarantino's a fun one because here's the thing: Tarantino is a very good director. And although I'll take the mickey out of him a lot for saying just his movies, just watch every other movie in existence, you've seen every one of Tarantino's movies. I think more than that, I appreciate his kind of work ethic and passion for cinema, and the fact that he kind of doesn't differentiate between the high art kind of golden, tippity top Casablanca, Citizen Kane, all that, and the most schlock awful thing ever. He'll consume it all and he loves it. And I think I actually prefer that side of Tarantino more than his films, even though I do, as much as I rip into him, like his films.
Yeah. And he's obviously a big fan of good old-fashioned stunt work, isn't he? Which
I was going to say, let's bring back to the stunts,
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, that's what the core of that movie, I mean, the main character's a stunt man. There's two other stunt characters, and then the movie's, I mean, not the first half, but the most exciting segments, and then most of the second half are about the stunts, the stunt driving, the excitement, the thrill, and I think he said he structured it like a slasher, which when you're watching it, you could see it, but the whole first half of the movie kind of throws that theory off. It's very much people sitting around doing Tarantino dialogue, which is engaging, but I don't think it's slashery.
What you're saying is essentially there's nobody dead until halfway through the film.
Well, yeah, it doesn't get to slasher stuff other than, I guess, the stalkery bits.
Yeah. I mean, there are some old school slasher films that do that. I distinctly remember watching Hell Night with Linda Blair from '79, I think it was. So just after Halloween. And getting 40 minutes in, and the first death's 42, 43 minutes in, and 40 minutes in, I was like, there's nobody dead. What's going on? I'm really confused at this point.
This goes well past that. I think it's 55.
Yeah. So it has been done. It's just very rare for that to happen with slashers.
Yeah. So that's it. That's all I got on Death Proof. So you know what? If you want to watch stunt people in a movie, watch Death Proof.
Yeah, Death Proof is actually very cool.
Yeah.
And salute all the hardworking stunt people out there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
stunt men, stunt women, stunt people, stunt teams, stunt choreographers.
Everyone who does these ridiculous, dangerous things just to entertain us and somehow usually don't die. It's amazing.
Yes,
Sure.
and I think on behalf of everyone that watches movies, please give those people a pay rise.
Yeah.
Take it out of Bob Iger's check.
Unless at least one group from each year get an Oscar, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is it for our stunt performance in film episode, but I think it'll just be me and Sam next week.
Yeah.
Yes. So until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine. Go read my Adventures of Robin Hood review, which I did last year for its 85th anniversary.
Yeah, hopefully you don't find me anywhere, but I'm okay judgmental if you do want to track me down. I haven't had anything up since last time, aside from obviously the Film Magazine's 50 Star Wars moments, which I think we all contributed to in bits and pieces. Although I do have, obviously from a few weeks ago, a review of Sherlock Jr., the Buster Keaton film. So yeah, that's my Keaton plug.
Nice. And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. You can find me on the Film Magazine. I have stuff on there, but it's not new stuff. And I don't know. I feel like I say something else, but maybe I don't. You can buy our Redbubble merch for the Film Magazine. Yeah, get that down in the description. Also, you can just give us cash through PayPal. We like money. Any denomination.
We promise we might give it to some stunt performers.
We will at least give it to people doing the very dangerous stunt of putting their risks at risk of carpal tunnel. So yeah. So that is it.
Being an independent publication, that is a risk in today's world.
It really is. Yeah. It's an emotional financial risk, which is I mean, arguably just as great as your life, but I mean, arguably. But that's it. We'll argue about that another time. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Thank you. Adios.
Goodbye.